Hello, everyone. My name's JV Robles, and I'll be your moderator for today. Thank you for joining us here at NetCom Learning. As a market leader in providing managed learning services, we're happy to host today's executive webinar, Goal Setting, a Traditional and Cognitive Approach. And presenting today's topic is Vincent Suppa. Vincent teaches graduate business courses at New York University, is an efficiency hacker and a certified executive Six Sigma Black Belt. He specializes in working with pre-IPO startups, helping them to position themselves for public offering, acquisition, or merger. He's worked in Asia as an expat, as well as in the US high-tech industry and European telecommunication industry. Self-described as a part of Generation Flux, he is the founding president of HR Avant-Garde. Please bear in mind that this is an overview of a robust topic. We have a list of other business skills areas that can be tailored towards your specific needs, which can be addressed in further detail. We'll just give you a quick overview of the logistics before we get started. To start with, you have the option to adjust the window size to your liking. Simply hit the escape key and find the zoom button on the top left corner of your GoToWebinar, right over here. And everyone has been muted except for our presenters. Also, a PDF of today's slides will be going out in the chat box in just a few moments. Please feel free to submit any questions you have for the presenter here in the questions pane. We'll address them at the end of the session. And today's session is being recorded, so you will get a free access to the recording in the next 24 hours via email. And I will just take a moment to show you where you could access this recording. You could log on to our website, netcomlearning.com, and click on the free webinars tab right over here. Now you'll see the upcoming live webinars and events. You could sign up as many as you want. If you scroll down the page, you'll see our recently completed webinars right over here. Just for FYI as well, we offer a collection of technology and business courses, learning services, and promotions can be found up here on this tab. And without further ado, I will hand it over to Vincent to present today's topic.
Welcome everyone. I'm very happy to be here. The least you need to know about goal setting in 18 minutes. Now on our agenda, we have the basics of goal setting, and then we're going to offer you a competitive advantage and discuss the cognitive approach to goal setting. But let's get some things out of the way. Let's focus on being productive, not busy, because remember, being busy is a form of mental laziness because results are much more important than effort. Now, studies have shown that goal setting explains success more than any other variable. And I'd like to take a macro view of goal setting. Think of all of the unproductive meetings that you attend due to a lack of goal setting at the company level. You have to get approval for a $500 expense, but call a 1-hour meeting with 20 people costing 10 times that amount, no approval needed. This is a problem that I would like all of us to adjust. So let's just keep calm and focus on the very basics of goal setting. Now, the cliche is true. You can't manage what you can't measure. So let's talk about the difference between qualifying and quantifying. When you qualify a goal, that is the vision. When you quantify a goal, that is plan. When you qualify a goal, that is strategic. When you quantify the goal, here we're talking about tactical execution. And qualified goals need to be broken down into quantifiable parts. We need to know, are we succeeding or are we failing? And having a metric is the best way to do that. We could benchmark. Very important. Now, what you should already know, and you've heard before, are SMART goals: specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. So this is something that you can easily find all over the internet, so I will not elaborate further. But all of your goals should follow SMART goals. Now, let's begin with the 7 keys of goal setting. Now, it turns out that our grandmothers were right. And what I mean by that is when I discuss the traditional approach to goal setting, it's common sense. And I hope that you feel that I'm not so much teaching you, but merely reminding you of what you already knew all along. So here are the 7 keys to goal setting, and let's start with the first one, defining your goal. That is your first key. Now, what a goal cannot be is vague, and it cannot be general. Goals must be clear, specific, detailed, and here's the most important thing that most of us do not do, written down and staring you in the face. Many people will write down their goal and they'll put it in the mirror and they see it the first thing in the morning and they see it as the last visual before they go to bed. So again, your job, my job, our job is to outrun the lesser versions of ourselves. We already said that goal setting explains success more than any other variable. And if we cannot be bothered to actually write it down and paste it in the mirror and articulate it every day, we have to wonder, how important is that goal to us? Now let's give some contrasting views of vague and specific goals. I've heard many people say, Vincent, my goal is to be more organized. But how might that be if we were to be specific? Well, okay, I'm going to go through 12 computer folders every day for the next 12 days. I will delete unwanted computer files, categorize misplaced computer files, consolidate similar files, and then back everything up on offsite storage. That is specific, and clearly it is measurable. So at the end of the day, you know, have you taken specific steps to achieve your goal? At the end of 12 days, you know, did I succeed or did I fail on my goal? If we were to keep that goal vague, I want to be more organized, well, we really do not know at the end of the day if we succeeded or not. Another vague goal, Vincent, I want to make more money. Well, how about this, that your goal is to increase your income by 25% within the next year. And how might you do that? Well, you might say, here's my management by objectives. I want to achieve that because I get that 25% bonus. And the way I'm going to do that is by attracting one new client every 3 months. Now, you may or may not succeed in that, but if you're not succeeding, you immediately know because we have a metric, and you can immediately recalibrate to reposition yourself to achieve that goal. Now, breaking it down is very important. We call this chunking. If you have a general goal, even if it's quantified, we do need to break it down into more specific, manageable parts. Break a goal into steps, and you are more likely to succeed. Small success does fuel big changes. Now, let's look at this, the why, the how, the what. In companies, most customers buy the why, not the what. What does Apple do? They make iPhones. How do they do it? Cutting edge technology. Why? Well, because they want to change the world. Well, for us, in a micro view, let's write down the benefit of achieving the goal. That is the why. That is the why. We might have a goal of we want to exercise 3 times a week. But what's the why? Well, we want to improve the quality of our life and live a more healthier life. So most of us achieve a goal when we understand the why. Now, if you cannot articulate the why, we have to question, is this a goal that we really want to chase? Because remember this, ladies and gentlemen, what you actually do only proves that you believe the why. Now, our second key to goal setting is setting a deadline. Constraints are very beneficial, and I am still moved when I watch on YouTube Steve Jobs' commencement speech in 2005 at Stanford, where he said that death really is beneficial because without that, we would never achieve anything. So it's a very moving tribute to Steve Jobs, and I encourage you to view it. But he did say that deadlines are our friends because with constraints, we're moved to accomplish. The third key is to list the resources on the critical path to you achieving your goal. It will be things that you need along the way for success. And this may be a growing list as you advance towards your goal. Now, for me personally, for myself, my clients, I find Excel a very useful software to write down and quantify goals, but you have to do what works for you. Now, our fourth key is make the plan. If we merely talk about it, it's a dream. If we envision it, Now it becomes possible, but when we schedule it, when we write it down, when we list the resources we need, when we list the deadline, now it becomes real. This is analogous to operationalizing the plan. Now organize a list of action steps into a plan. And as I said, Excel really does excel at this, but use whatever software you need or it works for you. And even if you want to write it down in a notebook, that's fine, whatever works. Your plan must be organized into at least two elements, priority and sequence. For priority, we talk about the Pareto 80-20 rule, very common, meaning that with 80% of what you need to accomplish can be done with 20% effort. So remember that rule, and not applying the rule means that you will major into minor things. Be productive, don't be busy, and we always say here, work smart, do not work hard. Now, sequence are activities that can either be dependent or independent on other activities. So if we have two activities that are not dependent on one another, both can be done in parallel. But we do want to organize all of our plans into the priority, which is going to give us the biggest bang for the buck, and then in sequence, which ones may depend on other activities. We just want to remind ourselves, work smart, don't work hard. Here is our fifth key. Let's write down the obstacles, constraints, or limitations that could prevent us from achieving our goals. For example, what are resources, time and money that may stand in the way? We don't have enough money, we don't have enough time. What are the additional skills that we may need to achieve our goal? What are the bad habits we need to break? And what are the good habits we need to develop? We do recognize that there are constraints to achieving our goals, and once we write them down, we can write down steps to mitigate each obstacle. Now, before we introduce our next key, let's review. 1, we want to define our goal. 2, we want to set a deadline. 3, we want to list the resources we need. 4, we want to make the plan. We want to operationalize what we need to do to achieve that goal. And 5, let's identify the obstacles and write them down. Now, before we go to our next key, let's look at the definition of operant conditioning in clinical terms. Reinforcing stimulus following a behavior that makes it more likely that that behavior will occur again in the future. When a favorable outcome, event, reward occurs after an action, that particular response to behavior will be strengthened. Now, what do we mean by that? In practical terms, the human psyche needs positive reinforcement to stay engaged on its way to achieving a goal. Now, I often tell students that I would like them to read at least 2 articles a day for the rest of their life so they increase their learning. Now, you could read an article on an app aggregator in maybe 2 to 3 minutes. So if you read at least 2 articles a day, you're committing at a minimum to 5 minutes a day. Everyone can do that. The reason why I don't tell students I want you to read 1 business book a week or I want you to read the entire business section of a newspaper each day is because by the 4th or 5th day, real life will get in the way and we will not be able to follow through on that goal. We may not always have 40 minutes a day to read the entire business section of a newspaper. So if we break that habit by the 4th or 5th day, we are less likely to continue it on the next day because, again, the human psyche needs positive reinforcement to go forward. So if we give ourselves a goal that realistically can be achieved every day, for example, reading 2 business articles on our smartphone a day no matter what, well, as each day passes by, we've given ourselves positive reinforcement that the psyche needs because we've achieved that goal, and that makes it more likely that we will continue to do so. Now, I always give an action item every day, and your action item for today, after I sign off this webinar, is if you have a goal, take action of some kind, no matter how small, towards achieving that goal. I mean immediately as soon as I sign off, because this is about building the momentum that the human psyche needs. So if you have a goal, and no matter how small, it's sending out an email to someone to help you, or even writing it down, or looking something up, do it immediately, because again, the human psyche needs positive reinforcement. A real decision is measured by the fact that we've taken new action. If after this webinar we don't take action, then we could say that we haven't truly decided that we want to achieve this goal. Now, our sixth key is to develop the habit. Do something each day that moves you closer to the goal. When I do executive coaching, often a client will say, Vincent, I want to earn $200,000 a year. And I will say, well, how much do you earn now? And the client might say, well, I earn $100,000 a year. And I will say, well, what have you done to achieve that goal? And often they haven't really taken any steps yet. And I say, well, what I want to tell you is this. The amount of money you make now is actually the amount of money you do want to make. You see, the only exception to that is if someone says, I want to double my income, and here are the steps that I have already taken to achieve that, although I haven't achieved it yet. So we want to develop the habit. Do something each day that moves you closer to your goal. Make a habit of writing down the day before the action items you plan on executing the next day. Now look how straightforward this is. It might take us anywhere between 2 to 4 minutes to simply write down what we want to do the next day to achieve the goal. And yet many of us do not do that, and that is why most people do not achieve all of the goals they want to achieve. But we want to have this habit of writing down the day before what we want to do the next day, and if you make no exceptions and do this for at least 45 to 60 days, neuroscience says that we begin to rewire the brain, so we are more likely to continue doing this in the future. Now, some tips on this key. If you're using Excel to track your goals, open up a new worksheet. Sequentially run dates down vertically in column A, and then in column B, at the close of business, write down what you accomplished that day. And if you did nothing that day, simply write nothing in red letters. And this is an example of what it might look like. And at the end of the day, if you start seeing a lot of nothing, that day you did nothing to achieve that goal, you need to either recalibrate or really question your commitment to achieving that goal. This is a way that we can be accountable to ourselves, and if you really want to excel, have a partner and be accountable to each other, so at the end of each day, you're mailing each other your Excel sheet on what did each of you do respectively to achieve your goal. It's much more difficult not to achieve a goal when a spreadsheet like this is staring you in the face. So let's review the 7 keys to goal setting. Define our goal. Specifically, not vague, and quantify it. Do not merely qualify it. Set the goal deadline, and even set milestones and chunk it into smaller goals that make up the main goal you want to achieve. Number 3, list resources you need to achieving that goal. It could be attending a webinar like this. It could be making a new contact. It could be developing a new skill. It could be clearing out an hour each day to achieve this goal. But list the resources you need. And then number 4, make the plan. Operationalize it. Write things down. Number 5, identify what are the obstacles that may prevent me from achieving this goal. Because once we write down the obstacles, we could now write down a plan to mitigate those obstacles and even to seek out help from those who can help us remove those obstacles. Number 6, very important, positive reinforcement and operant conditioning. Let's build momentum, and let's do something immediately after I sign off, because the human psyche needs positive reinforcement. And 7, item 7 comes from item 6, develop the habit so that momentum continues. Now, let's look at neurobiology and a cognitive approach, simply at a very high level. Now, this is your competitive advantage. This is what most people may not realize. Traditionally, we've been raised to believe that we achieve a goal, we will be successful, and once achieving success, we will be happy. But neurobiology reveals that this is a broken formula. Cognitively, we are not wired like this. We achieve a goal, we're successful. Are we happy? Maybe for a few days, but then we merely move the goalpost further. Here's how human beings are actually wired. If we could operate in a state of happiness to begin with, regardless of our externalities, but really focus on being happy, science shows that there's a higher probability that we will achieve our goals, which will lead to success. So this might not feel intuitively correct, but neurobiology reveals this as cognitively correct. And if I've whet your appetite how to leverage this already proven cognitive fundamental, this will be discussed in subsequent webinars. If you'd like to learn more, join me at hravg.com, and I would be honored if you joined us for our next webinar on October 29th, The Art of the Professional Apology. And we have come in just under 18 minutes. I thank you all for your time.
Thank you so much, Vincent, for such an informative and insightful webinar. Now, let's get to some of these questions. One question that we have here, do you keep your goals fluid, easy to revise, or do you keep them set in stone?
We must keep the goals fluid. It's an excellent question. You see, goal setting is meant to serve us. We are not meant to serve goal setting. When we keep things set in stone, we've actually placed ourselves below the goal. But situations change. Externalities change. Our priorities change. Imagine someone that was single and now is married. Obviously, goals change. So I think it's an excellent question. Goals must remain fluid. We always have to ask ourselves, what do we want today? Now, I just want to qualify that answer that if we constantly change our goals from week to week to week to week, that also might be problematic because we can never gain traction to achieve that goal. So we want to strike a balance. We don't want to constantly change our goals from week to week before we even achieve them. It's analogous that if we constantly leave a job and searching for a new job before we've developed a resume of success, but at the same time, very important, goals need to be fluid because we are above the goals that we set. Thank you.
Another question that we have, would you recommend keeping a bullet journal?
Yes, I think journaling is very important. What science has showed that merely by writing down a goal makes it more real for us. It's just how we're wired. Again, if we just talk about it, it's a dream. But once we write it down and it's staring us in the face, we're more likely to achieve that goal because when we're not, we're staring potential success right in the face because we have written it down. We've written down what we're not following through on. But when we merely talk about it, instead of writing it down, well, if we're not achieving the goal, we simply stop talking about it. So we're not as cognizant that we're not moving towards our goal. So I think that's an excellent habit to write down. And I think bullets is a very efficient, effective way of writing it down because it focuses on what we need to know as opposed to writing a long narrative format. Thank you.
Great. Does the 2 articles a day have to pertain to business only, or can it be on any topic?
Absolutely does not pertain to business only. It could be on any topic. You know, I believe that we should not live to work. We should work to live. So I believe whatever goal is important to you, you know, it could be extremely non-business related. It could be that you want to focus on being in an excellent personal relationship. That is a very worthwhile goal. So goal setting applies to both your professional life and perhaps even more importantly, our personal life. Because again, we don't want to live to work, we want to work to live. So it applies to everything across the board. It applies to what is important to you. Thank you for that great question.
Another question that we have, if you fall short of achieving your goal, what do you recommend in addition to a bullet journal?
Question. I recommend that we give ourselves permission not to be perfect. You know, I use the analogy of women's figure skating to the X Games. Now, figure skating does have males, but it's primarily dominated by females, and the X Games is primarily, you know, dominated by men. But if you look at figure skating, when someone falls, well, the judges crush them. They might have practiced 4 years for the Olympics, but one slip, they very rarely win. In fact, they're emotionally devastated many of the times. But when I look at the X Games, skateboarding and whatnot, I see people fall. they get right back up on the skateboard, and sometimes they even win. So I think we have to view this as the X Games, not figure skating. I believe that we have to give ourselves permission not to be perfect. So when we fall short of the goal, step one, did we fall short because that goal is no longer important to us? And if that's the case, then abandon that goal because you don't believe the why. But if we simply fell short because we did not prioritize it correctly, well, again, we give ourselves permission not to be perfect, recalibrate it, acknowledge that you did not succeed, and get right back up. One way to help us is to find an accountability partner. You know, it could be anyone where at the end of every day, you're going to tell them what you did or did not do to achieve that goal. So many of us, including myself, you know, we don't always achieve all of our goals right out of the gate. We often slip because that's just part of the human condition. But the people who succeed are the ones that don't make a big deal out of it. They simply get up and continue on that goal. Thank you.
Perfect. A few more questions here, Vincent. You gave a lot of great information. What is one or two most important elements that have the biggest impact on my goal setting?
I think it's going to be that all of us have goals. It's just a matter do we articulate them. So the most important thing, as I said, after I sign off from this webinar, immediately write down that goal, and then before you leave your desk, take one action, no matter how small. It could be an email, it could be a phone call, and take at least one small step to achieving that goal. Because what happens is when we say, I like what Vincent said, starting tomorrow, no. There's a greater likelihood that you won't do it tomorrow, but there's a likelihood that you will continue tomorrow if you start it today. So as soon as I sign off, write the goal down and take at least one small step. That's the most important thing to begin building that momentum right now, day one. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Vincent, and thank you all for joining us today. If you do come up with any additional questions, feel free to send them to webinar@netcomlearning.com at any time. We hope that you found today's webinar informative, and we look forward to seeing you back here with us soon. And